Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here with us for Ad Hoc Committee hearing. So I just want to go over a couple quick things before we start. One, this is not a Brown Act, so we don't have to follow the Brown Act rules, but we wanted to be as transparent as possible and as public as possible. So we're recording today. People can see it live streamed, or they can see it on the website later. Later on, I'm going to give some email addresses if people wanted to email us with their ideas. We're not taking public input here other than in writing or calling our office, and we'll give you the office phone numbers. We want to hear from you. You want to hear your ideas, but this is not a Brown Act, so we don't have to take public opinion from the podium. Our whole focus is to collect information to help us form a decision in board letters down the road. And with that, I'm going to start with my opening remarks. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon for our very first Fiscal, Transparency, and Accountability Subcommittee meeting. First, I'd like to thank my exceptional supervisor colleague, Gary, for partnering with me on this subcommittee. Working with her on several issues now, I know she cares deeply about her constituents, the county, and delivering for her district. Supervisor Aguirre and I are here today because we both agree on the importance of transparency and accountability in county governance. Last year, the county was able to deliver a balance of $8.6 billion budget, but we're only able to get there by working together to close a $138 million funding gap. Now, it's important that we begin looking at the areas in which the most potential for savings and increasing efficiency if we're to expect to balance the budget this coming fiscal year without putting at risk the county's ability to deliver the services our constituents need. Currently, the county spends about $2.3 billion annually, approximately 25% of our entire budget on contracts. This is important because it's in a major area where the county has discretion and control over its spending. Some have been calling for new taxes to raise the county revenue, but we have other options. As the supervisor representing the second poorest district behind District 1, my constituents believe that we should be looking inward at the potential savings, accountability, and efficiency before we consider balancing the budget on the backs of our hardworking constituents who follow the rules and pay their fair share of taxes. When you look at affordability in our region, sky-high housing costs, continued increase for water and other utilities, increases on food and health care, we cannot further burden our constituents. Instead, the county should look inward to find savings we need to deliver a balanced budget next year. The actions of this subcommittee will help ensure the county is fully accountable and efficient. After all, we want effective, efficient, accountable government. This is what our constituents I shouldn't speak for my colleague. This is what my constituents expect, and it will ensure that we do not add unnecessary additional costs to county residents. I would like now to turn my time over to Chair Pro Tem Aguirre for her comments. And by the way, I don't like to speak for my colleagues, even when I think they agree with me. I have only one job, and that's to represent the 2nd District. Supervisor?
Thank you, Supervisor. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here and for your interest in this important work. I also want to start by thanking my colleague and co-chair, Supervisor Anderson, who does an amazing and excellent job for his constituents. I met one of your constituents the other day, and he had nothing but praise for you. So I know you fight hard for your constituents, as do I. For my constituents who has the highest rate of poverty in the entire county. So making sure that we leave no stone unturned and look at all the potential savings that we can is absolutely our responsibility and mandate, and that's why I'm very thankful for this opportunity and for this work. I want to thank staff for all of your time and effort into putting the presentations together today. And as the supervisor mentioned, this is not a meeting that conforms to the Brown Act. However, it is an opportunity for everyone to have a front seat to the discussions that we will be having, which are going to be, this is the first of many to come as we continue to do this work. And we're always open for feedback and input from you all, because at the end of the day, these are the people's taxpayer dollars. Across the country, local governments are preparing for significant fiscal uncertainty. Potential federal and state budget changes could create an estimated $300 million annual funding gap for our county. And when resources tighten, we must make sure every dollar entrusted to us delivers real value to the people we serve. That responsibility is especially important for District 1, where more residents rely on programs like Medi-Cal and CalFresh than anywhere else in the county. These programs support working families, seniors, and children. When we talk about fiscal stewardship, we're ultimately talking about protecting those essential services. The county currently spends $2.2 billion each year through contracts to deliver services and programs. Contracting is not just an administrative function. It is a core part of how government operates and how we partner with organizations to serve our communities. So the purpose of this subcommittee is straightforward: to strengthen transparency, accountability, and performance in how those public dollars are spent. Let me also be clear about what this effort is not. This is not a witch hunt. It is not about casting blame or disrupting services that people depend on. This is about oversight done the right way, thoughtful, fact-based, and focused on improvement. As Supervisor Anderson and I have said from the beginning, this work is about using a scalpel and not a sledgehammer. We are asking practical questions. Are we measuring results clearly? Are services aligned with the community needs? And are our contracting processes accessible to the local organizations that help our communities thrive? Those questions matter not only for fiscal responsibility, but also for equity and economic opportunity. When local businesses and nonprofits are able to compete for county contracts, taxpayer dollars circulate back into our neighborhoods and strengthen our regional economy. Before we begin the presentations, I want to highlight one practical opportunity available today. The Department of Purchasing and Contract is hosting a procurement portal enrollment session from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. today in this building in room 402. For small businesses, nonprofits, and community organizations interested in doing work with the county, this portal is the entry point to participating in our contracting process. If you're here today and interested in doing business with the county, please make sure to make your way over to room 402. The work of this subcommittee is also about access and making sure people understand how to engage with their government. Today's meeting is just another step, as I mentioned earlier, in a broader effort to strengthen transparency and ensure our systems are working as effectively as possible for all the people of San Diego County. With that, I look forward to hearing from our staff, the presenters, and to having a great and robust discussion. Thank you.
Can I take it from here?
Please do,
Yeah,
Brian.
thank you. Chair Pro Tem Geary, Supervisor Anderson. We're excited, believe it or not, to provide an overview of the county's purchasing and contracting program, to talk a little bit about how we work with businesses and nonprofits in our community to spend that $2.3 billion that the supervisors mentioned, providing services and support to our residents and visitors. And we have about a 45-minute presentation today that will talk not only about how we buy goods and services, but how we lease properties, how we assist small businesses, and also how we protect workers. And those functions stem across a broad array of departments, so we have a lot of team members here that are the subject matter experts that will be part of that presentation. And that includes our operations chiefs for purchasing and contracting, Hugo Mora, Sheena Figueroa, and Rich McCarville. Our Deputy Director of General Services, Krista Ellis. Our Airports Director, Jamie Abbott. Our Deputy Director of Economic Development, Steve Lockett. And our Director of Labor Standards and Enforcement, Brandon Butler. And to kick it off, providing an overview of not only what we buy, but how we buy, I will introduce our Assistant Director of Purchasing and Contracting, Brenda Miller.
Thank you, Brian. So as you mentioned before, fiscal year 24-25, we spent $2.3 billion. And as if you can see, the majority of that was spent on health and civic services. And this was to deliver essential services to our residents. The other categories, IT, construction services, and facility maintenance, is really to make sure that our infrastructure, our buildings are maintained, are repaired, and most importantly, are safe. The other three categories, vehicle transportation, professional services, and consumables, including environmental services, they are here to provide day-to-day support in our operations. And so this really highlights our spending for our fiscal year 24-25, and it really enforces where we spend our money for our priorities and how we spend our money to use very public resources wisely to provide the services that our community really rely on. Now that we've looked at our overall spending, it's helpful to understand how our spending is guided. Our work is established through our county administrative code, and it's guided by key policies that define how the county buys goods and services, and to ensure that we are responsible at every step of the way. Board Policy A81 establishes when and how the county contracts for goods and services, ensuring work is justified, cost-effective, and properly managed. Board Policy 87 directs the county to use competitive procurement methods unless a valid exception or exemption applies. And finally, the CAO Administrative Manual brings both of these policies together to standardize contracting procedures and centralize oversight by purchasing and contracting. Through this framework, purchasing and contracting really provides standard procedures, tools, and training that the departments depend on. Together, these policies help ensure that county purchasing remains consistent, transparent, and aligned with county expectations. So our procurement process is not a silo, but a collaborative effort between our requesting departments and the Department of Purchasing and Contracting, also known as DPC. When a department identifies a need, they submit a request to DPC, and we begin the procurement process. The solicitation is developed as the program team prepares the scope of work and the evaluation criteria, while DPC ensures that the process follows established procedures, that the department then makes an award recommendation. The DPC team negotiates the terms and formally awards the contract. Once the contract is in place, the department is responsible for contract administration, while DPC continues to support the process through amendments, guidance, and corrective actions when needed. In the end, it's a shared process with clear accountability at every step. So the county's procurement system is BINET, and it's really the primary place where our solicitations are advertised for all the opportunities for goods and services. It's important to note that BINET is unique to the county with, and even if, so why it's unique is that it really collects a lot of the information that the county is looking for, and I'll share a little bit more about that. So you can access our solicitations without registering. So the vendors can look at our solicitations without registering. But if they do want to partake in this, they do register and it's completely free. That's a little bit different than some of the other procurement softwares that are out there where you do have to pay to submit a solicitation or a proposal. So this is unique to us because registration is free. No need to register if you want to see our solicitations. The other reason is that you need to register separately to our BINET because although there might be some other agencies that use this program, they're not connected. They don't talk to each other. So we do ask that vendors that are interested in submitting that they register for BINET. And the easy part is that you could submit your proposals electronically. So BINET really helps connect businesses with the right opportunities. And like I said before, once they register, they can customize their profiles to receive alerts that match the goods and services they provide. As vendors move through the registration, they just need a few key pieces of information to start the registration. Of course, their business name and their tax ID information, the types of goods and services that they provide, and a little bit of some demographic information, which we use to report on who we're doing business with. So this is the key information for us. Once the vendors are in our BINET system, they're able to access the solicitation and to see what's available for them that they could submit. They can also look at our plan holders list and pre-bid and pre-proposal attendance sheet. And why this is really important is because this gives them an insight on who is looking at these solicitations. For example, if we have a big construction project, maybe some small subcontractors like plumbers, electricians could reach out to the bigger construction companies and say, hey, I'm available if you need some plumbers, electricians. Vice versa, if a big contractor sees that there's plumbers and electricians that attended a meeting or that have looked at these plans, they could reach out and also potentially give them an opportunity to be subcontractors. So this is really good information where the vendors can use this to network and really communicate with other people that are interested in the same solicitation. So as you mentioned before, we have our BINET upstairs. And this is an ongoing theme with us where we're constantly looking at opportunities to offer this. So we do have another BINET webinar that's coming up on April 7th. We will have details regarding that on our website. And we will continue to look for in-person opportunities to offer this and additional webinars. So with that covered, I talked a little bit about where we buy, so I'm going to turn it over to Hugo Mora to walk us through how we buy.
Thank you, Brenda. To meet the wide range of needs across the county, different procurement methods are utilized depending on complexity, risk, and timelines. For straightforward, lower dollar purchases, simplified processes like P-card or quotes are utilized. And this will help us move quickly while increasing access for small businesses. For higher value, more complex work, we use formal procurement methods that will ensure fairness, transparency, and a strong return for taxpayers. And when competition isn't feasible, we rely on clearly justified single source exceptions or categorical exemptions. Using the right method for the right situation helps us balance efficiency and stewardship. The county is now required to provide 45-day notice to affected recognized employee organizations before the county issues new solicitations, renewals, or extensions for certain services contracts. The notification requirement came into effect on January 1st, 2026 under Assembly Bill 339. This step ensures transparency and gives our labor partners the opportunity to understand and respond to work that may intersect with represented classifications. Because of this added notice period, some procurements will take longer to reach the market, and the volume of posting in BINET may shift as we build this requirement into our planning cycles. We publish a quarterly procurement forecast showing expected opportunities over the next 6 months, and if an item on the forecast doesn't appear on BINET, it may mean that the procurement is going through the required AB 339 review process. Knowing this helps vendors stay engaged and avoid assuming an opportunity has either been canceled or deprioritized when it's still going through the required review period. The procurement card is our quickest and simplest tool for small purchases. It functions like the county's credit card and is best suited for micro purchases under $5,000. To maintain safeguards, cardholders obtain at least 2 quotes for purchases over $2,000 and 3 quotes over $4,000. Because it reduces paperwork and speed up low-value buys, we encourage departments to look at P cards first when timing and cost efficiency matters. The most common purchases using P cards are office supplies, office services, maintenance, repairs, and operations, business expenses, and wholesale trade. The request for quote is used when we need competition, but not a full formal process. It's designed for lower dollar, lower complexity procurement where price or best value can be evaluated quickly. RFQs can be completed in as little as 5 days, but up to about 60 days, giving departments a flexible and efficient path to secure the goods and services they need without sacrificing competition. Contracts can be awarded up to an amount of $500,000 annually or up to $1 million annually when the RFQ is issued for award only for small local businesses. Examples of recent RFQs are as-needed envelopes and printed envelopes, library books, as-needed grant writing services, pet shelter supplies, and as-needed water delivery. A request for bid is our most price-focused competitive method. Awards go to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. This is specifically effective for construction or goods and services with very clear fixed specifications. This method is used for job order contracting to establish a standing list of contractors to provide construction services. While the process takes longer than an RFQ, typically 45 to 120 days, it ensures we receive competitive pricing while protecting the county from risk. Examples of recent RFB procurements are aviation grade A jet turbine fuel, flood control district major maintenance project, San Diego River Basin sewer lining project, as-needed dairy products, and as-needed DNA evidence testing services. When projects are more complex or require specialized expertise, we use a request for proposal. RFPs allow us to evaluate not just price, but experience, technical quality, and overall value to the county. Proposals are reviewed by a source selection committee appointed by an independent authority ensuring objectivity. Because of their complexity, RFPs take more time, usually 90 to 180 days, but they give us the ability to choose the solution that best meets long-term needs. Awards under RFPs can be up to $2 million. Any RFP in excess of that amount will require board authorization. The RFP is also used for alternative project delivery methods like construction manager at risk, design build, or progressive design build for construction projects. Examples of recent RFPs are as-needed mowing services at county airports, as-needed tree trimming and removal services, modular furniture storage, moving and disassembly services, home and community care services, administrative support for health promotion programs. The request for statement of qualification is used when we need to pre-qualify vendors based on capability before price becomes a factor. It's commonly the first step in a two-step process or to build a standing list for future opportunities. The county also uses this solicitation method to pre-qualify bidders for public works projects as the first step for design build procurements for construction projects or to procure architectural and engineering professional services. In some cases, all qualified firms will receive an award. The timeline for this procurement method varies. Typically, it ranges from 45 to 180 days. Awards under an RFSQ can be up to $2 million, and it also will require board authorization if it exceeds that amount. Examples of recent RFSQ procurements are quarterly pre-qualification for public works projects, as-needed educational instructors and entertainers, development evaluation clinic services. Next, I will pass it to Sheena Figueroa, who will provide an overview of the non-competitive process.
Thank you, Hugo. So Hugo gave a great overview of the county's competitive procurement processes. What I'm going to talk about next is how we handle non-competitive procurements. So the first one on the list are single source exceptions. So single source exceptions are commonly referred to as single source and used when only one provider can reasonably meet the county's needs, and Board Policy 87 allows for the single source, so that's where authority comes from. These situations arise when a provider has either unique expertise, when standardization is critical for maintenance or interoperability, or when continuity is essential to avoid rework or disruption. These procurements move pretty quickly, usually within 5 to 30 days, but require strong single source justification to ensure we're protecting the public's interest. Okay. So the next non-competitive procurement process outlined in Board Policy 87 are exemptions, or areas we consider are exempt from our competitive procurement requirements. Board Policy 87 outlines situations where competition isn't required because the nature of the service or product limits the available providers. So there's a total of 16 exemptions, but some of the most commonly used exemptions are utility services, which can be used in instances where only one specific utility provider can be used at a county facility. Another example is equipment maintenance services, which could be used when the county purchases equipment and the ongoing maintenance for that equipment has to be provided by the manufacturer, or it could invalidate the warranty. Another example could be operating and maintenance services for software when the county cannot maintain the software on its own for reasons like not owning the source code. And finally, contracting directly with other governmental agencies only when it's a single source. So just like single source contracts as far as timeframes concerned, these also move pretty quickly within 5 to 30 days, and they allow us to efficiently secure essential services without compromising compliance. This chart puts together all of the competitive methods that we discussed today. It also shows the timelines for each procurement process. But at the last column, it also shows you the administrative costs, and those reflect our estimates on how much staff time it could cost the county to conduct each procurement type. The complexity of a procurement could increase the administrative costs for reasons like extensive negotiations of terms and conditions. Next, I'll pass it to Rich McCarville, who will overview contract management after procurement.
Thank you, Sheena. As Brenda mentioned earlier, the role of contract administration and post-award compliance is a departmental responsibility, and each department head designates a contracting officer representative, otherwise referred to as a core, from within their own department to carry out these duties and ensure the day-to-day oversight of the contract. To support departments in that role, purchasing and contracting provide a core academy that offers trainings to cores, a variety of trainings that provide practical skills needed to oversee the contract performance, manage contract requirements, and stay aligned with the state and federal rules, compliance rules. Cores also receive guidance on ethics and integrity and fraud prevention, reinforcing the accountability that comes with this role. As part of the county's broader equity and access goals, the program emphasizes supporting small local businesses throughout the contracting process. New cores complete foundational training within 6 months of an assignment, and all active cores participate in annual continuing education to stay current on policies and best practices. Now, before a contract is awarded, Quite often, the department core works closely with DPC to verify compliance, such as licenses, registrations, and other required qualifications. And the core also develops a monitoring plan, laying out what they will watch for and how they will provide oversight as they administer the contract. DPC handles the required pre-award sanction screening, and once the contract is active and awarded, the core continues ongoing checks to make sure licenses, insurance, certifications, security clearances, etc., remain valid throughout the term. Post-award, the core then implements the monitoring plan and conducts regular reviews, documents performance, tracks deliverables, ensures that contractors are meeting the terms of the agreement. They also ensure that county property associated with the contract is properly managed, and they review and approve invoice payments. And while the core leads these responsibilities on behalf of the department, purchasing and contracting stays available as a resource throughout. We're there to help with questions, compliance support, process amendments, and help support issue resolution. I will now pass it over to Krista Ellis to discuss county lease opportunities.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Rich. So we're going to shift gears now from how the county procures goods and services to how we offer opportunities to use our land and some of our spaces in our facilities. The Department of General Services, or DGS, has a team of real estate experts that support county programs with survey and appraisal services, buying and selling of our land, managing leased spaces for program needs on other people's property, and then managing leases on our land. In a little bit, you'll hear from the Department of Public Works about their unique airport operations leases. But today's discussion around real estate will focus on our real estate contracts, specifically leases, where the county is the lessor and another entity is our tenant or our lessee. So those real estate agreements, those leases, are legal contracts that allow for that entity, that tenant, to have rights to use our property for a certain duration of time for a very specific use. Now, I want to highlight on this slide, you see a rather blue circle. That really is to represent what you just heard about DPC's procurements and the magnitude of opportunity there. A few of those procurements do offer a service contract, and if that service provider who's selected will need to use space on our land, then the real estate team comes alongside that procurement and offers that real estate expertise and that leasing support. Otherwise, we do lead some competitive lease opportunities, and those average about 1 to 5 per year, so a smaller magnitude. I want to give a summary overview shown on this slide where our real estate authority and procedures come from, and it flows from the top, from the state level, where the California Government Code provides the authority and the roles and responsibilities for how counties are to operate, including real estate and leasing practices. We see that locally in the county through our administrative code, where that state code is implemented at the local level. A few examples of how the administrative code touches our real estate practices include the code allowing our Director of General Services to make property available for leasing. That code also allows us to waive competitive bidding when lease terms are below 10 years and $25,000 per month in rent. Next is the board policies. They really provide the framework for our procedures and how we operate. And I want to highlight 2 of them that touch our processes. You heard earlier from DPC about policy A87, which dictates competitive procurement, and that also oversees our leasing opportunity practices. But where you'll find the majority of our real estate guidance is found in Board Policy F51, which oversees how we manage, sell, and lease our property. And that board policy emphasizes efficient use and revenue generation. Board direction and county priorities continue to change over time, and I want to highlight that topics such as equity and sustainability are rapidly folded into our lease opportunity process and then into our lease terms. Recent examples of where you'll see that is Working Family Ordinance, the CLEAR Ordinance. You'll see it in enhanced sustainability priorities and the small local business preferences. I want to give an overview of the types of agreements we manage. We're managing currently over 280 agreements on our land, and those are very wide-ranging and diverse, and they are from a temporary short-term use, like a license or a right of entry permit for a Renaissance fair or a pumpkin patch, to a lease where we may have a health clinic on our property or a wireless lease on one of our sheriff towers. To the far end, a very long-term 50-plus year ground lease for affordable housing on our property. So of those land agreements, about 147 of them are leases. And it's interesting to note that 60% of our lease portfolio is found within Districts 1 and 2. I also want to highlight our lease portfolio reflects our county priorities. And in the last 10 years or so, we've negotiated or are in process of negotiating 11 affordable housing ground leases on county surplus land, reflecting the county's prioritization of increased housing affordability in our region. We have over 50,000 acres of land that the county owns, and the majority of them are managed by the Department of Parks and Recreation. It follows then that the majority of our lease portfolio, about 38%, are found on parks land. So the revenue that we receive from these leases goes to fund county services and programs. And we have approximately an annual revenue from leases of over $4 million supporting those services and programs. I want to briefly touch on how our competitive lease process works at the county. And like DPC, we are in partnership with county program departments on this process from start to finish. Starting at the top of the graphic there, we work with county program departments as they identify leasing opportunities on the land that they manage. They reach out to us, and we immediately start with the support, beginning in the green box there, where we complete noticing of availability of the new lease opportunity. And you can find those notices posted on our leasing opportunity webpage, also via an email list to all interested parties. And if it will be a competitive lease opportunity, it will be posted on the DPC 6-month forecast you heard about earlier. Next, the program department starts drafting the scope and evaluation criteria for that competitive lease opportunity. And typically, that opportunity will come in the shape of either a request for quote or a request for proposal. So we leverage the more efficient, faster request for quote when we have a very defined scope on our land. So a great example of where we might leverage an RFQ is down on the first floor of the CAC here, where we have a coffee station in place. It's a very prescribed area, very prescribed use. So we try to use a more efficient process with an RFQ. One slide back, please. The request for proposal option is leveraged when there's a new use on our land or a more complex operation, and a good example of that would be our equestrian facilities. So the program department screens the quotes that return from that opportunity, and they make a determination about who the winning bidder is. For a request for proposal process, that program department is on the source selection committee, which informs a decision to the source selection authority. So at the end of the day, we have a winning proposer. The real estate team then takes over the final step in this process, where we're negotiating and executing that lease and ensuring that we capture the important criteria and priorities of the program in the county in that lease document. And we also manage the ongoing lease process, including any lease amendments or inspections that are needed. Next slide, please. So we currently have some lease opportunities I want to highlight on this slide. Starting at the top, there's about 77 acres of agricultural land in Guajome Park up in Oceanside, where we're wrapping up a request for proposal process and we'll be entering into an agricultural lease there. We also have posted on our leasing opportunity webpage a notice of availability for a future lease to operate the Bonita Golf Range. And the notice of availability is a requirement of our code, but it also acts to demonstrate the interest on that future lease opportunity. And the Bonita Golf Range is located in District 1. I want to highlight that. Coming up later this month, we're hoping to finalize and post a request for proposals for 2 leases down in the Tijuana River Valley in District 1. They'll be for 1 lease operating a community garden and another lease to operate an agricultural and education demonstration center on parkland. And then next month, a request for quotes will be issued to operate the BMX facility at Cactus Park in Lakeside in District 2. So I want anyone who's interested in getting connected with these leasing opportunities, I wanted to provide these QR codes so people can snap on them here and directly get to our leasing opportunity webpage, which is the top code. And if they'd like to be connected to our interested party email list, the bottom code there will allow them to get connected for those future lease opportunities. Now I will hand it over to Jamie Abbott to speak to airport leasing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Krista. Good afternoon. So DPW Airports differs a little slightly from DGS leasing. The county airports follows Federal Aviation Administration guidelines for leasing primarily through compliance with FAA grant assurances, FAA policy manuals, and local airport lease policies. These rules apply because the county accepts federal grant funding, which obligates us to follow FAA requirements for managing and leasing airport property. The county complies with FAA leasing guidance by incorporating FAA grant assurances into the leasing agreements and policies. We prioritize aeronautical use of airport property. We charge appropriate rents for our lease, for our tenants, often fair market value for any non-aviation leaseholds. We limit the lease terms, typically 50 years for aviation use and up to 99 years for non-aviation industrial uses. And we monitor tenants and enforce compliance through inspections and corrective actions just to make sure that they're using their property according to FAA guidance. The County Airports is the owner and operator of 7 general aviation airports, but one of those also functions as a commercial service airport, Palomar Airport up in Carlsbad. So DPW Airports has a variety of lease types. These include aviation leases such as aircraft hangars and flight schools, non-aviation industrial and commercial leases, and leased land used for auto parking, equipment storage, and so forth. Some specific leases we have at county airports are American Airlines at Palomar Airport, Lowe's Shopping Center, again at Palomar, a CAL FIRE base at Ramona Airport, and the Sheriff's Astria, which is the aerial support and regional enforcement agencies at Gillespie Field. In process, and what we're working on now, is the Cajon Air Center development at Gillespie Field, which is an aviation use property that will have new development leasing opportunities slated for this year and in 2027. Leasing revenues are the primary source of revenue for the Airport Enterprise Fund, or the AEF. This fund is separate from the county's general fund, and our airport system is completely financially self-sufficient. Funds from the AEF can only be used for the operations, maintenance, and development of the county airport system. The current fiscal year budget for the AEF is $28.3 million. And lastly, for those interested in viewing current leasing opportunities or being added to our email distribution list for future opportunities, there's the QR codes shown here. And thank you for your time. I'll turn it over to Brandon for our next section here.
I think we're going Steve first. Yeah. Steve Lockett.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm Steve Lockett, Deputy Director for Economic Development and Prosperity with the county's Office of Economic Development and Government Affairs. And if my nameplate will stay put. Good afternoon. You've just heard the nuts and bolts of the county's procurement process. Now I'd like to speak to you today about how we're evolving that process to better serve and include our small businesses and our small and local nonprofits as well. I'd like to start with discussion on our economic prosperity through innovative contracting, or EPIC initiative. It is an initiative that came directly out of what we heard from our community engagement from residents, nonprofits, and business owners across the county. It's being driven through collaboration across the entire county enterprise. It marks a shift using purchasing power to help create a more inclusive and equitable local economy, and shows the county's commitment to the local community through a new goal of at least 25% of our annual spend going to small local businesses, and that does include nonprofits. From here, I'll walk you through three things: who qualifies as a small local business, how that small local preference program works, and the support we offer to our small businesses. In August of 2025, your board approved many changes to our procurement process to reduce barriers for small businesses. One of the most significant changes was expanding the definition of a small local business. And instead of just recognizing those businesses that have a state of California business certification, we've increased the ability for us as a county to recognize small businesses to include the following: small businesses who not only meet the certification requirements and employee count, but also small nonprofits, certified veteran and disabled veteran-owned businesses, and businesses with certifications from other public agencies like the City of San Diego. We've also identified and created a new category to recognize businesses that are advancing equity across our region. The Social Equity Enterprise, or C, designation is for businesses and nonprofits that are embedded in our communities and enhance equity. These are organizations that are headquartered in new market tax credit zones, which are federally recognized areas of economic disadvantagement, which are looking for new areas or new avenues of investment. As C can also be an organization that primarily serves low to moderate income populations, advance climate and environmental justice, and they may also provide pro bono services or be majority owned by individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. This designation is about recognizing those that are already embedded in our communities and are giving back and supporting our local communities and environment. And so why is this expanded definition important? Well, if you are now recognized as a small local business by the County of San Diego, that enables that small local business to get a 15% discount when it comes to procurement opportunities. So therefore, if a small local business is coming to the county for a procurement, it will appear as if their bid is 15% cheaper than those that they're competing against. This allows for more competitiveness for our small local businesses. And for many of our contracts over $1 million, prime contractors are going to be required to subcontract at least 3% with small local businesses and complete a utilization plan to ensure accountability. For many contracts that are not required to subcontract, through our EPIC and through our work with our various departments and our prime contractors, we are trying to identify other ways in which small local businesses can be assisted. This creates more opportunities for smaller players without adding unnecessary burdens on us and admin or on those small businesses. In our EDGA department, we want to make sure that we are helping small businesses be successful and thrive at all stages of their development. Through our business engagement and strategic training, or BEST initiative, we offer a variety of programs that support businesses throughout their lifetime. But we also recognize that it's not just enough to support small businesses by creating new programs. We need to reevaluate our practices and make sure that we make our process easier for all. We're expanding the use of simpler procurement methods such as RFQs, which were discussed earlier. They are typically quicker and more straightforward for businesses to complete and the process to be done. As we put together contract requirements across the county, we're taking extra care to remove those that have been burdensome to small businesses and streamline the process. Small businesses and nonprofits operate differently, of course, than larger organizations financially and operationally. And so we're allowing progress payments and payments within 15 days of improved invoices. We're also publishing a procurement forecast that was referenced earlier of upcoming procurements so businesses can prepare in advance of an opportunity to make sure that they have the time and resources necessary to bid. For us, across the entire enterprise, economic prosperity goes hand in hand with supporting equity and diversity, as well as environmental sustainability. To ensure that the products and services we procure reflect our values as a county, we are embedding equity and environmental sustainability as core considerations, starting with the planning process. Additionally, we have expanded the demographic information that we collect through BuyNet and other sources through our procurement portal, BuyNet, to give us a better understanding of the diversity of the vendors that we're working with. This will inform our outreach efforts and support programs. I'm now going to hand it over to Brandon Butler. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Today I'd like to highlight some of the work of the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement has been doing to strengthen worker protections while also supporting responsible employers across our region. Over the past several years, our office has focused on building systems that not only enforce labor standards, but also prevent violations before they occur. That includes strengthening policies that govern county contracting, improving transparency around wage theft violations, and partnering with businesses to help them understand and meet their obligations under the law. Through these efforts, we have been able to support enforcement actions that help workers recover wages that were rightfully earned, while also creating new compliance tools that allow the county to identify risks earlier and ensure public funds are supporting responsible employers. One of the ways the county is strengthening worker protections is by leading through its own contracting practices. Through our what we like to call Leading by Example initiative, we have worked with county departments and procurement partners to embed labor compliance protections directly into the county's contracting framework. Now specifically, we've added anti-wage theft language into the representation and certification forms, these template forms that are required for all contracts, also including our general contracting service template. This means that companies seeking to do business with the county must disclose any active wage theft judgments before they receive a contract. This change allows the county to identify compliance risks earlier in the process and ensures that public funds support responsible employers who treat their workers fairly. It also gives the county additional tools to hold contractors accountable, including the ability to withhold payments until outstanding labor judgments are resolved. Ultimately, this initiative helps align our procurement practices with our values as a county, protecting workers while promoting ethical and responsible business practices. Now, another important tool that we enforce is the Working Families Ordinance. This is involved with workers on county construction projects or operating on county-owned properties receive basic workplace protections. The ordinance applies to larger construction projects in certain trades, as well as businesses leasing county property. It requires contractors and subcontractors to provide protections, such as paid sick leave, safe working conditions, and protection from retaliation. From OLSE's perspective, our role is to help ensure that these standards are not only written into policy, but are actually implemented in practice. That means working with employers to help them understand their responsibilities, partnering with county departments to monitor compliance, and stepping in when enforcement is necessary. By implementing and overseeing policies like the Working Families Ordinance, the county is helping set a standard for responsible development and construction practices across the region. Now, another important policy effort has been increasing transparency in the construction industry through the Subcontractors Transparency Ordinance. Large development projects often involve many subcontractors performing different types of work. Historically, it has been difficult to track those subcontractors and ensure that all workers on a project are protected by labor standards. Now, this ordinance requires contractors to disclose information about subcontractors working on major construction and development projects, including large commercial developments, multifamily housing projects, and where there's significant renovation work, over 10,000 square feet. In practice, OLSE has been using publicly available enforcement data to check whether contractors or subcontractors applying for permits have outstanding wage theft judgments or active labor claims. This approach allows us to identify potential compliance concerns earlier in the process and helps ensure that projects moving forward in our region are supported by responsible labor practices. Now, a very important policy I want to highlight is Board Policy B74, which focuses on workers in janitorial, landscaping, and security services. Those are some of the highest wage theft industries in the state. And they have historically experienced high wage theft violations and exploitation. This policy establishes labor standards for companies providing these services under county contracts, including requirements related to fair wages, worker retention, workplace training, and other basic labor protections that promote stability for workers and responsible practices among employers. Now, currently, the policy applies to 16 county contracts representing nearly 1,100 workers, helping ensure that employees providing essential services to the county facilities receive fair treatment and stable employment conditions. In 2025, OLSE continued implementing this policy by providing workplace rights trainings to over 550 workers across these industries. These trainings included live interpretation and translated material in 7 languages, reinforcing the county's commitment to equity, access, and ensuring workers understand their rights in the workplace. When wage theft allegations are substantiated, the county may utilize the Wage Theft Retention Fund to withhold payments from contractors and redirect those funds to workers who are owed wages. Together, these efforts help ensure that workers who maintain county facilities and provide critical services are treated fairly, while also supporting responsible employers who follow the law. Now, one of the tools supporting OLSE's enforcement and transparency effort is the county's wage theft judgment dashboard, something we created. It's one of the first in the nation. This dashboard provides publicly accessible information about employers with outstanding wage theft judgments issued by the California Labor Commissioner. By making this information easier to access and understand, the dashboard helps workers, community members, and government agencies identify businesses with unpaid labor violations. For the county, it also serves as an important compliance tool, allowing departments to better evaluate the labor history of companies that may be seeking to work with the county or operate in our region. To further expand public access to reliable and understandable labor standards information, OLSE has enhanced its website and digital resource library. New and updated resources include plain language guides explaining workplace rights, employer obligations, training materials designed to prevent common labor violations, guidance supporting fair chance hiring, employer preparedness resources related to immigration enforcement, as well as practical compliance tools to help businesses navigate complex legal requirements. These resources serve as a critical first line of support to both workers and employers seeking timely and accurate information. Together, tools like the Wage Theft Judgment Dashboard, enhanced public resources, and expanded enforcement authority reflect the county's broader strategy of combining transparency, education, and enforcement to protect workers and support responsible employers in our region. Now, I also want to point out that OLSE continues to strengthen enforcement mechanisms to hold bad actor employers accountable while supporting workers who have already prevailed in legal proceedings. In response to the statewide wage theft crisis and significant enforcement backlogs at the state, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 594, which took effect on January 1st, 2024. This legislation grants local jurisdictions, including the County of San Diego, the authority to independently enforce key provisions of the Labor Code. Building on this authority, the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement launched a Workers' Rights Enforcement Program in partnership with the County District Attorney's Office and County Council, creating a coordinated enforcement model, I believe one of the first in the country, that has already proven effective in securing justice for workers while promoting a fair and competitive environment for those law-abiding employers. Through a 2-year grant from the California Labor Commissioner's Office, OLSE has developed a comprehensive wage theft enforcement framework that has already received more than 600 inquiries for help from workers, initiated over 30 active investigations, and recovered more than $103,000 in stolen wages from workers in our county. These efforts complement additional programs designed to support workers who have already won their judgments at the State Labor Commissioner's office, but have been unable to actually collect. In January 2024, the county launched the Workplace Justice Fund, beginning with some initial funding from the Board of Supervisors. The program allows workers with civil administrative wage theft judgments to receive essentially $3,000 from the fund. In return, their judgment is assigned over to the county, and we essentially act as the ability to collect the judgment as a collection agency. And we've already recovered nearly $60,000 over that from workers. And that money first goes back into the fund. So the $3,000 we've given to the worker, when we recover, it goes back into the fund to help additional workers. And the program is one that's being looked at around the country as a model for helping workers. Again, we've been able to return funds to workers who would really have no other assistance. I also want to point out, another innovative program that we've been working on, which is our Good Faith Restaurant Owners Program. This program, seeks to help, restaurant workers who have won their case at the Labor Commissioner's office but have been unable to collect. In addition, we've also launched a new pilot project with the State Labor Commissioner's office where we're now assisting restaurant workers even before their case goes to hearing to see if we can't resolve it with the restaurant. And to date, we have, recovered nearly $40,000 for workers without having to spend one restaurant permit here at the county with this program. So together, tools like the Wage Theft Judgment Dashboard, cross-agency initiatives, enhanced public resources, expanded enforcement authority reflect the county's broader strategy of combining transparency, education, and enforcement to protect workers, responsible employers, and ensure that wage theft does not go unnoticed in our region. I'll now hand it back to Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, and thanks to all the members of our team for a really comprehensive overview of our program, really that spreads across a number of departments. And also thank you to business owners and members of the public that showed up today to hear about how we are attempting to partner with you. One last reminder that our team is up in room 402, which is right across from the elevators. If you'd like to learn more about how to register for BINET or any of the technical assistance that our team provides. And with that, Chair Pro Tem and Supervisor, hopefully this presentation was helpful in showing how collaborative our process is across all the buying departments, but also how much we value partnering with the local community to bring business opportunities to them. And with that, our team is happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. And yes, I can speak for myself, but definitely learned a lot today, and I really appreciate all the great work that's happening in all of our departments. I do have a few questions. One is kind of a basic one, but when you were talking earlier, Ms. Miller, about the selection process, the more complex request for proposal process, who conforms the selection committee?
Thank you for the question, Pro Tem Aguirre. So what happens is the department is usually the one that will select who are the source selection committee members. And then, occasionally, sometimes there's different, factors that go into what that decision is. If they're external county members, then DPC will make sure there's no conflicts of interest prior to them, being approved to serve.
So would it be safe to say that it depends on the specific type of proposal that's being considered and the expertise required?
Exactly.
For that? You would recruit members of this committee to help in the selection?
Absolutely. It's very specific to expertise. And there's just different considerations, but absolutely.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. And then my next question has to do with single source. When we invoke A87, what type of standards or independent reviews are required so that we could make those available to the public to ensure transparency?
Absolutely. So The process now, so it's all different, because there's 3 different justifications for single source, as we discussed in the presentation. So one of them's unique capability, for example. And that one can be a little bit subjective, right? So it could mean many different things, but when we receive single sources like that, our department, the Department of Purchasing and Contracting, will justify that single source and ensure that it's accurate. But for example, how would we do that for unique capability? We'd do market research. We'd find out if other agencies are contracting with them, if there's other established single sources, things like that. It could, and it varies. Everyone could be unique. For standardization, for example, you guys may have seen sometimes that come forward for state mandated services, right? The state requires that we contract with this or something of that nature. If that's the case when those come through, we'll obviously vet and ensure that that is truly a state mandate. And then continuity is the last one. Sometimes those might come through for things like we need an electronic health record that is used interoperably throughout the state, and we want to use this system. So we would ensure and confirm that that was accurate before putting it forward. As far as the thresholds for single source, which we didn't go into detail in today's presentation, anything under $200,000 doesn't go to the Board of Supervisors. So that's a single source process that goes through the Department of Purchasing and Contracting. If it's over 100,000 but under 200, it also goes through the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for that group. Same process is followed, but as far as transparency, those single source letters, they're not public at the moment through that process. However, they are PRA-able documents, if you will. So if the public wanted to see those documents, we could disclose those. The ones that are public are the ones that come to you that would exceed $200,000 annually.
Would that be an added burden to start doing that for staff?
I mean, we could look into it, absolutely, if that's a recommendation you'd like to make.
Okay, something to keep in mind. I'll pause there because I don't want to hog the mic. I have more questions for later.
Okay. Since implementation of the EPIC initiative last year, what progress has been made towards the county's goal of at least 25% of the contract spend going towards local small business?
Thank you for your question, Supervisor. As of January-ish of this year, we were looking at 21% of contracts that have been enacted since this fiscal year began in July of 2025. That number will fluctuate probably throughout the year because it is based on the contracts that are enacted in this fiscal year. But we're working closely with the county's information office and, county's technology office to analyze this on a quarterly basis. Based on the most recent numbers, it is at 21%.
Are there any issues that you're facing that, 21 is a great number, and I love the direction, but are there any things that prohibit people from, I mean, what's the positive and negative that you're hearing from the system as you're doing this outreach? Is there something that the board could look at to make it easier for you to hit the goals?
Sure. I think one of the things is definitely outreach. I believe, as I mentioned in my part of the presentation, a lot of what became EPIC and became in our best programs that we offer came from input from our region, came from businesses, came from community groups. But part of what we're doing now through our EPIC program is actually we are working to see how we can continue that external engagement. And part of that is sharing information. As I mentioned, the procurement forecast looks 6 months out. So one of the things we're trying to do with our partners is share that procurement forecast to be like, hey, here are the upcoming procurements, whether they're Health and Human Services Agency, PSG, whatever, and get the word out to those communities, those businesses, those nonprofits in those areas so that they can start working towards prepping their capacity to bid on those contracts. And we're also working with a number of partners to help build capacity for businesses that need assistance. That's why we have our STEP program, which is specifically designed to help businesses learn more about the procurement process. We have our core program that is in conjunction with the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. We have our build program as well. We're trying to do more to do that outreach. So certainly happy to share that information with your staff and team to make sure that we're reaching those constituents that you have in your districts to help spread the word.
Thank you. I have a question. Now, Brian, I'm not sure. When I was going, we were presenting slide 12 and 11. On one of them, it said awarded based on best value to the county. And then the other one said awards are made to the lowest bid. Was that, I would think that no matter what it is, we're looking at best value, you know, trying to get the best return for our constituents. Is there that distinction, or why is there that distinction? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask the DPC team to come up and talk about that nuance, because on the request for bid, it is very price specific. That is essentially how value is determined, whereas with some other methods, it may not be the lowest price with other value considerations that are part of that criteria evaluation. So Rich, can you?
Yeah, sure thing. I'll happy to expand a little bit on that. So request for bid process, pursuant to the California construction laws, we have to follow a low bid process on most of our construction projects. So that is lowest responsive, responsible bidder, so low price wins. That's mandated by the state. We also use bids, I think Hugo mentioned it, for, you know, simpler commodity type products. So for example, we buy fuel in some cases using a bid process because it's tied to an index and it's a specified product. The alternative method, and probably the most common method outside of the construction projects, is the request for proposal process. So that's price and other factors, so best value. And you can imagine that as, you know, you've got a component of price evaluation, let's say it's 25%, and then 75% of other criteria. It could be company experience, personnel experience, technical approach. We do some small local business scoring components to encourage participation of subcontractors, things of that nature. So that's kind of the main difference between the two. But sometimes we have to use a bid process.
Got it. It makes great sense once you introduce gasoline or fuel.
Right.
You're getting the same octane, it's just a matter of price.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for that. On a different note, and I'm not sure, I'm going to leave it to you, Brian, on who can best respond to this. Can you expound upon the system that we have in place to determine if a contractor is not fulfilling their obligations, and what steps are for termination of the contract? So how is it that we measure these companies, and how do we terminate them?
I'll have, again, Rich, you can take it.
Yeah. So obviously, as I mentioned before, the contract administration and management is a department function. So they're obviously tasked with doing the day-to-day administration. There's over 600 cores, contracting officer representatives at the various departments of all experience and skill levels. That's why we run the academy, to try and provide education and best practices. But in terms of there being an issue, obviously if there's an issue, the goal is first that the core deals with it and gets them back compliant with the contract. If that's not possible, they typically engage DPC, which is the first time that we hear about the issue. Most often, the first process is what they call a corrective action notice, which is effectively a letter outlining the non-conformities and providing a timeline that we need them to be rectified. And that typically is kind of an informal notice that comes from the department to their contractor. Now, if that doesn't work, the next step is what we call a cure notice. So cure notice comes through the Department of Purchasing and Contract. It's a more formal letter. We give them a reasonable opportunity to cure the default. And if they don't cure the default, we may terminate them for cause. And then obviously, if we're at that point, we would typically engage with all of the stakeholders involved and obviously make a decision. So that's the kind of general process that's followed to manage performance. Obviously, the goal is that performance is corrected and brought in line. But there is some occasions where that doesn't happen and we have to go, you know, all the way through to a termination.
Thank you for that. Sure.
I have a follow-up question to that. So does that also apply to due diligence? For example, not specific to their commitments to us, but more so related to if their business license is current or if their nonprofit status is active, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, they would be not in compliance with their contract if they don't hold
Yeah.
the required licenses and certifications and the various things that they need to
So the
hold. yeah.
core folks would be responsible for that and then enter into this process that you said, notice to cure and,
Yeah, post-award, right? So DPC gets involved pre-award, and we, help in that sanction screening and that due diligence. But post-award, obviously, the responsibility goes to the department. So we hear about it when they bring it to us. But yeah, if they don't have those required licenses, they would be in default of the contract.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
My next question's related to BiNet, and we talked about it being a standalone system, but are there plans for us to streamline onboarding to make it compatible with some of the other systems that are out there, like the city one that you mentioned, or maybe be able to have a single sign-on, things like that?
So I believe that those conversations had been had before, and the efforts they could create something as a single sign-on for our own county systems through an external entity. It would be at a cost. But when it relates to outside the county, that's a more difficult task because all of these softwares are proprietary. And the way that Steve just mentioned and I mentioned earlier, we have customized our BiNet with all those demographics that we're trying to report back. And so although there could be somebody else using BiNet, they might not have all of those questions. So we want to make sure that we're meeting our requirements, but part of the solution is making sure that we constantly have these BiNet labs and webinars. And I know that we just did one, I'm going to bring it up, for our RFP grazing, because that's what we heard, that they didn't understand that process. So we did some BiNet labs in Alpine and in Valley Center to make sure that those small local businesses were able to register and be able to submit to us.
That helps, thank you. And yeah, education is so important, especially when it comes to uplifting small businesses or local small businesses, which is so important, which is what we're striving towards, right? So, thank you.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Whoa, before you take off. So, this is very helpful to me. I had no idea how intricate this is, and I'm sure nobody in my district knew. So on the BiNet, because you're person signing in and you're getting some of the demographics and you're qualifying the person, if I'm hearing you correctly, you have kind of a profile of that company who's signed into the BiNet. Is that correct?
So if they when they register, they have a slew of information that they have to include as they're registering. Part of it is the demographics. They're saying what type of small business or nonprofit, and what they're selecting as types of services and goods that they provide. But the other key thing that I didn't mention is the reason we do ask them to register is that's how we get our plan holders list. So that's how we know who's actually downloaded the solicitation. And if we see that maybe nobody's downloaded it, then that means that we have to go and do additional outreach. In addition, when I said maybe there was a small contractor like a plumber or electrician, they see who actually downloaded or who attended a meeting, and you can only do that by registration. So if we didn't have registration, we wouldn't know who exactly was downloaded these solicitations.
You partially answered my follow-up question.
Okay.
Because you're thinking just the way I am.
Yes.
So if we have that information, do we ever proactively say, hey, ABC company, you've applied for this type of contract, let's say a distribution. We want somebody to distribute something throughout San Diego County. I don't know what it is, just whatever. And this is a company that's applied for a contract like that. Would we ever send them a note saying, by the way, this contract's available, have you thought about bidding on it?
Oh, so when they select the goods and services that they offer, they automatic will get a notice saying a new procurement has come out with these particular specifics.
So we do that automatically.
It automatically does that,
That's
yes.
great work. Good job. You done?
I'm good with my question.
Okay, I have a last question here. Earlier this year, the board amended a contract with the Padres for parking spaces near Petco Park. I don't think parking contracts are one of the first ideas that comes to mind when we're thinking of county contracting and revenue opportunities. As parking in locations such as downtown San Diego becomes more scarce and costly, I'd like to ask staff if they can provide us with more information on the county parking contracts currently in place and how those agreements are laid out.
Hello, Supervisor. Thank you so much for your question.
Before you start,
Yes.
I want to thank everybody's help putting a parking lot in Gillespie that I worked on for 2 years. So who all worked on that, thank you. So I'm very parking minded, so just as a preface, go ahead.
Yes, happy to provide some information about those parking agreements. So I'm going to focus on the downtown parking garages, and there's actually 2 parking contracts I'm going to speak about. The first one is an agreement that was procured through DPC that the county receives revenue on, and that's for the 2 garages here at the CAC at Cedar Kettner and then here at the Waterfront Park at Ash Street. So that procurement was just completed recently in 2025, and with the options to extend will go through 2030. The county receives 95% of monthly net parking proceeds from those 2 garages, and it averages approximately $720,000 per year coming to the county. Now, the other contract is at the Mills Building parking garage, and you mentioned the Padres lease that would touch that garage. That's also with Ace Parking. However, the county is one of 2 entities that make up the joint power agreement at the Mills Building. It's the county and MTS. So the San Diego Regional Building Authority, or SDRBA, completes that procurement for that parking garage, and the revenue from that garage actually flows through the SDRBA and goes to fund the operations and maintenance of that property. So it's not a county-managed parking agreement, although the county is a beneficiary through the joint power agreement there.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Please do. We're arguing over whether that was the last question. It was the last question. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank all of the presenters and all the great work that you all are doing. I learned a lot today. I think that we're doing some incredible, innovative work. I think that as we continue to do this work, obviously, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're looking for efficiencies in addition to the innovation already taking place. Obviously, cost savings as we are facing headwinds that are, challenging times ahead, especially around fiscal challenges. We need to also ensure that we continue to have strong oversight so that we make sure that our limited resources are maximized for the benefit of the public. So again, I want to thank my colleague Supervisor Anderson for your partnership on this effort. This is obviously the first of many more meetings to come and many different conversations that we will have. So please, I want to encourage everybody out there listening in or present here today to, as you learn this information and come up with questions, send them our way so that we could integrate that into our forthcoming recommendations. And then lastly, I'll just like to remind everybody that our next meeting will take place April 13th from 3:30 to 5:30, so please go ahead and save the date for that. And again, thank you Supervisor Anderson for your partnership.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Gary. You're an incredible, great partner to work on this with, so thank you for that. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Brian Albright and his team, all of our presenters, and the rest of the county staff who helped organize this first subcommittee meeting. Our goal here today is to make sure that the public knows how procurement, contracting, and leasing is conducted in the county. Our subsequent meetings will be delving further into the process to determine where changes must be made, where additional revenue can be found, and where the county can be more efficient. All of the information today you heard will be made available publicly on the county's website, engage-san-diego-county.gov/fiscal transparency and accountability. I suspect if you Google it, it'll pop right up. And if you don't, you can come to my website, and at my county website, there will be a link. We're not trying to make it hard. All of our subcommittee meetings information include meeting dates, live streamings, agendas, minutes, notes, and presentations will be posted on the website so the public can follow along with our decision-making process. You'll also be able to submit your comments with using paper slips locally. I meant to say that earlier here, and then we'll accept them. Or you can go to the website at any time and post or email us. And I believe that we have two staffers, one from your staff, one from my staff. It's not my notes, but they'll be on the website if somebody wants to communicate directly with them. Again, thank you all for participating. This is just the beginning, but it's a great frame of reference in how we move forward. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.